Okie Country 101.7. It's Cliff and the Fun Country Morning Show. Happy Memorial Day to you. Is that even a happy Memorial Day? I know a lot of people are using the weekend, but Memorial Day not really a happy holiday. But you can always make the most of it in remembrance. And I don't know, a lot of people take time to go visit family at cemeteries. They'll place their flowers and wreaths today. It's a big day for that. It's a day for barbecues. Kind of the kickoff of summer. Lauren Rich here with Rich Consulting joins me. Memorial Day can mean many different things to many different people, can't it?
Absolutely, and it does. You know, Memorial Day actually originally started as Dedication Day post-Civil War.
Right.
And so family members, especially in the South, would go to the graveside, they would decorate, they would actually have potlucks there. It wasn't commercialized, of course, until the mid-19th century when they, I'm sorry, that's so wrong, mid-20th century. The mid-20th century when it was commercialized, and then it became the beginning of the summertime holiday, the lake holiday, those kinds of things. But it has always been in remembrance of and memorial for those who have lost their lives.
I can see that it's tough for families, especially those that have recently lost a family member, and this might be the first Memorial Day. It's
the
really,
first
really
everything
hard.
Is always the hardest. The first Christmas, first birthday, first Memorial, those are always the hardest. But I don't know, for parents who have lost children, I don't know that ever gets easier.
I can't imagine.
I can't either. I personally, my statement to people is there is nothing more unnatural than losing a child.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, that's the thing that I don't know that I could get past.
Yeah.
That's the one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could tell me about anything else and I'd find a way through it. But that would be a tough one. I don't think parents are supposed to see their children pass.
No.
It's supposed to be the other way around.
That's right. Very unnatural. And mamas and daddies have been sending sons off to war with that very fear for generations and generations.
Right.
So, you know, in thinking about the survivor's guilt piece, I had a couple of veterans who actually wrote in and had questions about how to handle that, how to manage that, and things like that. So let's just start with the concept that survivor's guilt comes from surviving a traumatic experience, right? And generally, you survive and someone else in the experience doesn't. Sometimes you can be completely removed from it, and you may be elsewhere when it actually happens, but most of the time it comes from living through the experience and not having the other person with you.
Right. And you get guilty about that. Guilty through the holidays, guilty on days like today where it's Memorial Day.
Guilty on a Wednesday, guilty on a Thursday.
Guilty every day.
Any day that ends in Y.
So how do you deal? I mean, I know if you have it, you have to deal with it because you have a life to live.
Sure. Everybody has a life to live. So survivor's guilt and guilt in general, but especially survivor's guilt, comes from the concept of personal responsibility. Okay, and that almost above all else is what is preached and taught every single day in military life. From making your bed to ironing your clothes, cleaning your weapon, to being at formation on time. Camaraderie comes through suffering. Okay. I'm in pain, you're in pain. You freeze, I freeze. That's what builds people's togetherness, so to speak. And so then you go off to war with this sense of personal responsibility for other people, and sometimes they don't come back.
Right.
So let's take a simple example of personal responsibility. A simple example of personal responsibility would be a negligent discharge, right? It is always, always, always your responsibility to take care of your firearm, what direction it's pointing, how it is managed, how it is cleaned, operated, all of those kinds of things. Absolute personal responsibility.
Right.
That's why the military never says accidental discharge, because it's not. It's a negligent discharge, okay?
Right.
So the concept is everywhere. So let's take that concept, but let's put it into the context of war. We go, we deploy, and let's say that we're an infantryman, we're a two-time deployer, okay? Every deployment is different and independent. Every IED is different and independent. So let's say that we're out and about and one day we have a close call and we're in a certain area of Iraq or Afghanistan and that IED goes off. We do our debriefing, we talk about what my personal responsibility was in that scenario, and then we've basically, quote unquote, prepared for the next one. The problem with that is that every IED is made differently. It's made by a different Iraqi or Afghani, it's made with different parts or resources, and every creator, so to speak, has a different level of knowledge or skill set type. Okay,
Right.
so even though we've debriefed and prepared for one, it does not prepare us for the second one, and that's the misleading part about it. Is the concept in boot camp and in basic is always I'm in control of everything in my environment, and so when we have major trauma like death on the combat field, then we feel personally responsible, even if we are not. And the thoughts of I should have known, I should have seen. Why, if only, why not me? All those kinds of questions.
If I had only been in that vehicle instead of the other.
Yes, absolutely. And I've known people that have lost guys that they've served with, and they were in another country, or they weren't even in the same location when that service member died, and they still feel that sense of survivor's guilt.
How do you get rid of it? Can you get rid of survivor's guilt?
So part of it is, do you want to? How much of a burden has it become? And really, survivor's guilt is almost the burden of coming home. You're happy to be home, but then you feel selfish because you're here, because you're with family and they're not. Their family is missing out. And then you feel even more selfish because why should I feel guilty? Because I've been given this opportunity and here I am throwing it away, wasting my time feeling bad. And so it's a lose-lose. So one thing is, how intense is it in your life?
Right.
The second thing is, if I get rid of the survivor's guilt, or if it lessens, will I have forgotten that person? And obviously the answer is no. We'll never forget those people who sacrificed their lives for our country,
and
ever.
Some people, don't they come back and then lift those up? They turn it into a positive thing, like this was my buddy.
And
we were in this together, he didn't make it, and then they usually end up being a part of that person's family. They attend.
Yes, they name their children after them.
Stuff like that.
Yes.
That's an example of it being turned into positive.
Yes, and you will have memories. Many veterans report having memories on a regular, everyday basis that may be funny, or, this time when we almost died, or whatever it may be. And then Memorial Day, it's almost a shift to real loss and sadness. And I can tell you from personal experience, there is nothing more sobering than watching a PBS special about Oklahomans who have died and seeing people that you know in those pictures. That is so humbling, and it can really put that into perspective.
I'm sure. And I'm sorry. I appreciate you sharing this with us today.
And those things,
they're real people and real events. They're tragic.
They are, and they will show up at random. And when you see those, it's almost like the world stops for that second. You drive by that sign on the highway, you drive by that cemetery in particular, and it's like the world stops.
Or an intersection, or an old home place, or you run into someone that was connected with that person. I mean, it could really affect you in so many ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you deal with it, really? What's the way? When you're really struggling, and days like today, there are people that are struggling with that today.
Yes.
Because they're going to go to a barbecue and they know one of their squad members didn't make it, and they're going to remember them all day today.
Yeah. So one thing is really thinking about things within context. We have to keep trauma in context. That is the most important part of trauma work. Okay. Always remember that. Keep it in context.
Right.
The other thing is embrace those positive memories. If they liked grilled corn on the cob, or Hawaiian sweet rolls, or apple pie with ice cream, eat those things.
Right.
Enjoy those things.
Drink their beer today.
Yes, drink their beer.
Even if you hate it.
In fact, some people have kept coolers that had that person's beer or drink in it, and crack one of those open. I've had veterans before also who got a firearm from someone else, and they'll say, I just can't go use it. And my response to that is, they gave that to you, or that was left to you to make more memories and to embrace their memory. It is intentionally meant for you to feel closer to that person. The only problem with that is that some people do not want to feel those things. Right. So they would prefer to live in numbness and detachment.
It's crazy.
So you have to make that choice.
It's kind of like the song Lee Brice, "I Drive Your Truck."
Yes.
And that one kind of puts it into perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
I think I'm going to play that coming up, just in honor of those because you left something. In this case, it was a truck, and the truck left just the way that he left it, but he's not coming back. So
like I
he takes
said,
that time to drive those country roads, do the things that they would have done, and think of them and remember them and honor them.
And the other thing is, what is productive about survivor's guilt? What are we getting out of it? Is it really doing anything for us? And the short answer is no. That's why they call it guilt, because guilt is pretty much a useless emotion. All it does is make us feel less competent, less worthy, and less of a person.
Right.
So thinking about those things is pretty important.
Well, have a great Memorial Day today. And I saw the tears in your eyes, and I know that you thought of someone.
Sure. And
or
you know,
someone's, I should say.
And thinking about those things, we all know somebody who died for our freedom. And that's the bottom line, is we have people who come back all the time, and you know, some people say, don't thank me for my service, which is a completely lengthy discussion for another day. But,
right.
you know, some of them feel guilty for even getting out. Some of them feel guilty just for coming back, and so it varies upon the person. But we all know somebody who's lost someone close to them, and that really is the ultimate sacrifice. So we can be here and free and drink what type of coffee we want and worship whatever God we want and wear what we want without covering our faces.
Mm-hmm.
We only have those freedoms because someone has given their life for us.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I have to ask you as a therapist, and by the way, Lauren is a licensed therapist and she focuses on trauma. Isn't there an amount of responsibility that you feel as a therapist? I mean, this has got to be one of the toughest jobs, because you're catching people in the aftermath of trauma and trying to turn their lives around. It's got to be almost ridiculously hard for you when you're unable to reach, or if you are unable to reach someone and help them. What's that like, being a therapist? Because a lot of times you're their last resort. They've been dealing with this. They're having issues with this.
It is really hard to watch someone not get better, because I know, because I have seen it. I have seen how good life can be for people on the other side once they work through that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It is so hard to watch people be upset and miserable all the time, but that's a choice that they have to make on their own.
But
I can't do that for them.
Do you, as a therapist, though, have to be prepared for your own survivor's guilt? If you were dealing with patients and
we all have those
an
thoughts
event
of,
or whatever?
I could have done something differently, and especially when people commit suicide.
Right.
You know, there are certain organizations and agencies that put all of that weight on the provider, and that is really a scapegoat issue, in my opinion, because if you are that driven to make that decision, there's nothing that your provider can say to you that's going to change your mind if you're that committed to it. On the flip side of that, I would never want that for any of my guys or for their families, because I know the devastation that comes with it. But we all, as providers, have those thoughts, whether people have completed treatment or not, whether people have committed suicide or not, of what could I have done differently? Why didn't I see? Why didn't I know? We all question ourselves.
Well, hopefully someone listening will reach out if you know someone suffering trauma or having that survivor's guilt. And which leads me to, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Because you deal a lot with veterans, but anyone that's dealt with trauma, that's your specialty.
Yes. 918-912-2266.
And you're on Facebook and all the interwebs. And
I am on all the interwebs and the face space. Yeah. I'm also on the Google machine. You can use that as well to find me.
Lauren Rich of Rich Consulting, our guest this morning on Memorial Day. Day to remember. It's Cliff in the Fun Country Morning Show on Okie Country 101.7.